Chapter 281, Go to the Cemetery. With his revenge finally carried out, Noah felt a surprising calm settle over him. The rage that had driven him earlier had dissipated. When he returned home, Lysandra was waiting. "Noah." She approached and took his hand. Though Lysandra had transcended her original AI constraints and was learning to feel, her emotional experience was still new and imperfect. She had witnessed what he had done and could sense the tangle of feelings inside him now. Noah squeezed her hand in return. He was steadier than he had been. He wanted for once to do something simple. Take his family, Lysandra and Gwen, to visit his parents' grave. In America, people are buried either by cremation or traditional burial. Noah's parents had been buried in a cemetery. His relatives had insisted on it as part of their customs. Their plot was in Woodlawn Cemetery, one of the oldest and largest cemeteries near Manhattan, up in the Bronx. Many Manhattan residents chose Woodlawn, and after his parents' deaths, Noah had come every few months to tend the grave, clean the headstone, and leave fresh flowers. In the States, visiting the cemetery is a normal part of daily life for many. People go when they feel the need, not only on holidays. "Lysandra, call Gwen. I want to take you both somewhere," Noah said, exhaling as he looked at her. "Okay." Lysandra nodded, and her voice came from the device in Gwen's room. Gwen was lying on her bed, legs crossed at the calves, a magic book open in front of her. She hadn't gone out, so she wore comfortable pajamas. As she shifted, the silk pajama pants slipped down a bit and revealed her pale lower legs and ankles. The room was dim and the curtains were drawn, but the soft pallor of her skin still caught the light. Her ears twitched when Lysandra called, and she snapped the book closed. Lysandra told her Noah wanted to take them out and to come downstairs dressed. "Okay, I'll be right there." Gwen put the book back on the shelf, among other heavy tomes borrowed from the Camartage library. Noah had borrowed the books for her. His friendship with the Ancient One made the lending period less of a worry. Gwen opened her wardrobe. A girl's closet, when opened, often revealed an overwhelming variety of clothes, and Gwen's was no exception. She'd learned to sew and had a whole room for tailoring, so her wardrobe was always full. It was autumn, cool but not yet winter, so she picked a knitted sweater and a pleated skirt with white tights. She checked herself in the mirror, pleased. She looked sweet and put together. When she came downstairs, Lysandra had changed into a simple gray dress that emphasized her quiet elegance. Gwen followed, smiling as she approached Noah. Seeing the two of them together lightened Noah's features. The tension around his mouth eased. "Let's go," he said, taking both their hands. He left behind the bitterness and led them out to the garage. He decided to drive to Woodlawn Cemetery. The steady motion and the city passing by would help clear his head. They drove out through the manor gate and onto the coastal highway, talking as they went. Noah told them about his parents, about small things from their lives, and spoke in general terms about recent events and his vengeance, careful to omit the grisly details. Lysandra listened with quiet attention. Gwen listened with the empathy that came from her training and from knowing him well. By the time they reached Woodlawn, the mood was softer, more reflective. Noah parked and led them through the main gate. The cemetery felt like a large, peaceful garden. Wide lawns and trees framed the paths, and gravestones were set neatly across the grass, blending with the landscape. There were more people here than usual. The Chitauri invasion days before had left casualties. Even though Noah and his allies had contained the threat, a city as crowded as New York could not help but lose lives. Families came to mourn, to tend graves, and to find a measure of closure. The atmosphere quieted them. Faces in the paths were drawn and sorrowful, probably relatives of the recent dead, still raw and grieving. Noah led Lysandra and Gwen past rows of headstones, through clusters of people lost in private remembrance, until he stopped before two stones he knew by heart. Here lay his parents. Their names and the stories of their lives were carved on the stones. There were no religious symbols. The family had not been believers. "We're here," Noah said softly. He set down the carnations and lilies he had bought outside the cemetery. Lysandra and Gwen placed their flowers beside his. They stood together for a moment, the three of them in the quiet green, each carrying their own thoughts. The cemetery's hush folded around them like a gentle hand. Chapter 282, Resurrection, An uninvited guest? Dad, Mom, I'm here to see you again. It's been a rough 6 months. If I told you everything, you'd probably think I was exaggerating. Noah knelt and cleared the weeds around the headstone, using a small brush to scrub at the moss. The cemetery staff cleaned the stones weekly, but they always missed spots. Visitors tended to tidy the graves themselves. Gwen and Lysandra crouched beside him and helped. They both showed a respectful quietness around the grave. Noah told them a few of the things that had happened over the past half-year, stories that sounded like science fiction. Thankfully, there was no one close enough to overhear, otherwise the tales would have seemed like boasting or revealed far too much about his true identity. "Oh, right. Mom and Dad, this is Lysandra and this is Gwen. They're my new family. If you could still see them, you'd love them," Noah said, patting Gwen's bowed head. Gwen shook off the gesture and, brimming with enthusiasm, addressed the stone. "Hello, Uncle and Auntie. I'm Gwen. Lysandra and I will take good care of Noah from now on." Her voice was bright and full of life, and both Noah and Lysandra smiled. "Don't worry, Gwen. We'll see my parents again in this world very soon," Noah added, smiling. Gwen cocked her head, confused by his phrasing. Noah explained, "Once I collect all 6 stones, I can bring them back." It had been his private hope ever since his memories returned. With all 6 infinity stones, resurrection wasn't impossible. The stone's power had already been shown. Banner put on the stones and snapped, restoring half the lives Thanos had erased. The Soul Stone had its own rules and couldn't resurrect those taken by its cost, like Black Widow or Gamora, but Noah's parents had died ordinary deaths. They should be well within the stone's capabilities. Noah's Resolve rune could bring the recently dead back if their souls lingered, but his parents had been gone several years. Their bodies had returned to bones in the ground, and their souls had likely moved on. He wondered briefly about the local mythological rules. Did the afterlife here include reincarnation? But, in any case, the Avengers' example suggested time alone didn't make people unresurrectable. He told the 2 women about his plan to gather the 6 stones to resurrect his parents. Gwen clapped with excitement, then, conscious of the solemn setting, broke into an awkward apology. Noah waved it off. It was a joyful thing to be allowed to wish for. They finished cleaning the stones and rose together. "One more thing," Noah said. Even if his parents were coming back, the old grudge still needed closure. He touched the dark seal in his palm and released 2 pale, trembling shapes from the ring. At first, they were dazed, then recognition hit, and their faces twisted in terror. They knew this man. They had tormented and betrayed Noah's parents' squad. These were 2 Hydra members who betrayed the team. When Noah had killed them, he'd absorbed the souls of everyone present into the ring. There had been 4 souls captured in total. 2 unrelated Hydra members had already been used as nourishment for the Dark Seal. The 2 traitors, however, had been preserved. Noah wanted his parents to see the fate of their killers. "Dad, Mom, you should remember these 2, right? They got what they deserved. I avenged you," Noah said, voice hardening. He poured magic into a flurry of spiritual thorns that lashed at the 2 wailing souls. Their cries were agonizing, but no one outside could hear them. Lysandra, seeing Gwen too affected, covered the girl's eyes. Gwen yelped that she wasn't a child anymore. Noah didn't prolong it. He crushed the 2 souls outright, scattering them into invisible energy until they were utterly annihilated. "All right, I'll come see you again next time," he said softly. After tidying the graves, Noah's mood had steadied. The revenge chapter of his life had closed. The next target was Hydra itself. The organization was likely responsible for his parents' deaths. As they walked out of the cemetery toward the parking lot, an uninvited presence stepped into Noah's path. A white-haired old man in a black leather coat leaning on a silver cane appeared, as casual as if he'd been waiting for them. Noah stopped 10 meters away and took him in. The man wasn't human. An abnormal, oppressive aura radiated off him, and based on his appearance, Noah had a rough idea who he was. "Ha! Mephisto, coming to Earth so brazenly. Aren't you worried the Sorcerer Supreme will take offense?" Noah said, narrowing his eyes. Although other pedestrians moved past them, it was as if they couldn't see the 4 of them. The group felt detached, almost in another world. "Sorcerer Supreme? She's a tricky one," the old man purred. "But I'm here for you today. This is only a clone. I don't expect your Sorcerer Supreme to notice my arrival." Noah stared at the Lord of the Hell Dimension, a dimensional demon on a par with Dormammu, trying to figure out the purpose of the visit. The thought occurred that Mephisto might want him as a ghost rider of all things. If that were true, Noah thought, he would refuse outright. Mephisto certainly couldn't afford the price he would demand. Chapter 283, Mephisto. Mephisto is an ancient, malevolent dimension lord who rules a hell-like realm and commands terrifying power. He delights in stealing souls, torturing and killing, and corrupting the living. Modeled on the Christian devil, he governs his hell dimension by binding mortals with infernal contracts and harvesting the souls they relinquish. The more souls he accumulates in his realm, the stronger he becomes, and Earth, with its patchwork of divine jurisdictions, has long been a favored hunting ground. Different regions funnel souls to different afterlives, so Mephisto must contend with local gods and systems whenever he comes to collect. He especially relishes the sinful, unwanted souls that other powers refuse. Where heaven will not take them, Mephisto waits. On Earth, areas with high crime and chronic depravity are like fertile fields to him. Those lost, corrupted souls, spurned by gods and ghosts alike, are delicacies in his eyes, secretly claimed and reserved until he comes to harvest. Still, he does not always arrive in person. His power is bound to his hell dimension. The longer he remains away, the weaker he grows. On Earth, there is also Camartage, and within it the Ancient One, a presence Mephisto prefers to avoid. For that reason, he usually sends a duplicate or underling to operate in the mortal realm while he watches from afar. In America, Hell's Kitchen in Manhattan is especially attractive to him. He likes the name, and the chaotic villains who thrive there regularly supply him with fresh souls. Lately, however, something odd had happened. When he scanned that neighborhood, he found no drifting sinful souls in its shadowed alleys. It was as if someone had been stealing his harvest. Mephisto did not take that lightly. He is used to being the thief, not the victim. But he could not stay on Earth long enough to investigate without inviting the Ancient One's attention, so he posted his dimensional demons across the planet to gather intelligence. After their long reconnaissance, and after one detachment witnessed an invasion of Earth by an army from another planet, they finally brought him good news. They had found the thief. Their reports included sightings in a cemetery and evidence that whoever it was could do the things Mephisto expected only he could. He wanted to see the thief for himself. Noah felt the presence before he understood it. The man in the suit across from him looked ordinary at first glance, an old gentleman with white hair, but Noah's instincts told him otherwise. He narrowed his eyes and let his own magic flare through his pupils. The power sharpened his vision and revealed what lay beneath the human disguise: red skin, horns, a visage like a devil. The aura around the figure confirmed his suspicion. Mephisto. The devil sensed Noah's appraisal and tightened his masquerade. The demonic features faded from Noah's sight. All that remained was the old man in the suit. Noah took a step forward, placing Lysandra and Gwen behind him. "Mephisto," he said, steady and loud. Mephisto's smile flickered with interest. "Oh, you know my name?" "Noah Lee," Noah answered evenly. "Once an ordinary human, now someone with unusual power. I'm curious, where does the power in you come from?" On Earth, the name Mephisto carried notoriety beyond any single occult circle. Goethe's Faust had immortalized a devil named Mephistopheles who bargained for souls, and the similarity pleased this entity. He didn't mind being mistaken for the literary figure. The idea of signing contracts and collecting souls suited him. Noah's tone held a caution he could not hide. He did not want to battle in this densely populated area. Mephisto was no minor demon. A full confrontation here could wreak devastation far worse than past battles in New York. Noah had no certainty he could match a being of Mephisto's caliber without terrible collateral. Mephisto studied him, amusement in his eyes. "You're aware enough to name me. Tell me then, what is the source of the power that now pulses through you?" As he spoke, Mephisto saw Noah make a small, deliberate gesture with his hand. Chapter 284. Noah, you dare come to Manhattan Street? I'll slap you in the face. The moment Noah laid eyes on the Dimension Lord Mephisto, the image of a powerful demonic being planted itself in his mind. Still, he couldn't help recalling what he'd seen of Mephisto in films from his previous life. Most of that image came from Ghost Rider. Johnny Blaze made a deal with Mephisto to save his father, only to discover he'd been tricked and that Mephisto had trapped him into serving him. In the movies, Mephisto never truly revealed overwhelming power on Earth. In fact, by the end of the second film, he was sent back to Hell by his own Ghost Rider. From that, Noah had inferred, when Mephisto comes to Earth, he tends not to arrive in his true form, but sends a weaker avatar or clone. If that logic held, the Mephisto standing before him was likely just a diminished projection. Noah wasn't exactly worried, but he wasn't reckless either. It would be foolish to pick a fight with a Dimension Lord on a city street, so he took precautions. His fingers, resting by his thigh, began to trace a small motion, calling a spell. He wanted them somewhere safer, a place where a fight wouldn't endanger passers-by around the cemetery. Mephisto noticed the gesture, but he was too late to stop it. As a diminished clone, he had limited power. Noah's casting was incredibly fast. In an instant, the magic was complete. A fissure, like shattering glass, cleaved the air between them, a transparent mirror suspended in mid-air. The crack spread outward, enveloping both of them, then, as if time were folding, the fractures resealed and sealed them into a different space. Mephisto glanced around. The cars and pedestrians kept moving in the street outside. The sky and city remained unchanged to any onlooker, but he knew they were no longer on the original Earth. They'd been pulled into the mirror dimension. Mirror dimension? Kamartaj's trick, are you? Mephisto said. He'd tangled with the Ancient One enough times to recognize that unique Kamartaj spell, the mirror dimension that isolates combatants without affecting the reality outside. Behind Noah, Gwen reached out instinctively, but her hand passed right through him. Noah hadn't taken Lysandra or Gwen with him into the mirror dimension. In her eyes, Noah had vanished, and she recoiled in surprise. Lysandra quickly grasped her wrist and calmed her down. Heh, Mephisto chuckled, amusement twisting his features. Kamartaj, huh? I didn't expect practitioners of Kamartaj to be dabbling in souls. You lot call yourselves Earth's righteous defenders. Seems like we're not so different. Noah folded his arms. He had already guessed why Mephisto had come. It was the Dark Seal, Noah's tool for absorbing souls. I'm not from Kamartaj, he said flatly. I just know the Ancient One. Besides, the souls I collect aren't stamped with your brand. What I do with them is none of your business. Mephisto's face went cold. The arrogance in the boy's voice annoyed him. Few dare seize souls from my grasp, he said, his tone warning. Despite being only a clone, a dimensional demon's presence still radiated from him. The air in the mirror dimension thickened under that pressure, as if reality were congealing. Noah felt it, a projection of Mephisto's true domain, a hellscape of fire and sulfur, unending cries of tormented souls. For a moment, the smell and sight of that hell leaked into the mirror world as Mephisto's aura pressed against it. Noah raised an eyebrow. Seeing Mephisto's pretension, he couldn't resist provocation. Listen, Mephisto, I'm taking the souls in Hell's Kitchen, and not even Jesus is stopping me. And from now on, don't show your face on Manhattan Street again. If I ever see that fake skin of yours, I'll rip it off. I'll slap you in the face. Mephisto's smile twitched. The boy's brazenness and the casual mention of Jesus left him slightly off balance. Was the kid connected to the heavenly faction? He didn't know. What he did know was he wouldn't be humiliated like this. Young man, don't be so insolent. You have no idea who you're dealing with, Mephisto snarled. He slammed his staff down. Red fire blossomed at its tip, and a wave of hellfire surged outward, burning toward Noah. Blood-red hellfire erupted from where Mephisto's scepter struck the ground, fanning outward in a lethal arc straight toward Noah. Within that arc, figures of pedestrians flickered and walked, projections from the reality world, but Noah and Mephisto were inside the mirror dimension. The hellfire could only harm things within that space unless its power became great enough to shatter the mirror and spill into reality. This hellfire was not the ordinary fiery red Noah had seen in movies of the Ghost Rider. It was a vivid, almost living blood red, exuding a cold, soul-scorching menace. Noah felt the weight inside it. Though Mephisto's figure here was only an avatar, the force behind the flame was not to be dismissed. Noah raised his hands and wove gestures into the air. As the hellfire advanced, The ground between them trembled violently. Blocks of pavement and facades rippled as if assembled from toy bricks, rising in waves. The mirror dimension itself began to twist and warp. The earth beneath the hellfire split apart, opening two yawning sides, and the blood-red flames were forced to curl and surge like dancers in a narrowing corridor, never reaching Noah. Within the mirror dimension, the caster commanded the environment, unless the opponent knew this magic better. Mephisto, unsurprisingly, had no familiarity with Kamar-Taj's mirror dimension. Under Noah's control, the surrounding buildings and streets collapsed inward like a tidal wall and smashed toward Mephisto. Mephisto kept unleashing hellfire, the signature, most devastating attack his avatar could muster. But the ground that had been steady under him now bucked. The sudden motion almost threw him off balance. Gripping his white scepter, he focused the avatar's power into its tip and flung it at the ground. The recoil shoved him upward and out of the crushing mass. He landed on a car suspended in midair by the inverted space and glared down at Noah, his expression bitter. He had expected an easy contest. In Mephisto's estimation, Noah was a petty soul thief, perhaps a human who'd stolen some soul-devouring magic or a device. That was why he'd sent a modest avatar to punish an insolent thief trespassing in his realm. The imps had reported the thief as a man in a flying armor, like the Iron Man from Earth, and Mephisto had treated the armor as a trinket. But Noah's behavior told a different story. He had recognized Mephisto, then invoked Kamar-Taj's mirror dimension and used it with skill. The possibility crossed Mephisto's mind that Ancient One might be baiting him. Pride and self-preservation warred inside him. An avatar's death would cause no physical harm to Mephisto's true form, but it would be humiliation, fodder for the other dimensional demons. Better, he judged, to withdraw now and deal with this insolent human more carefully later. A plan formed. Allow Noah a small Pyrrhic victory today. Return later and show him what true despair felt like. Human, Mephisto intoned, voice full of false magnanimity. You have courage daring to challenge my authority. Consider this your victory. Treasure it. The next time I stand before you, you will learn what hellfire truly is, what the wrath of a dimensional demon can do. He reached to channel his dimensional power, preparing to pull himself back from the mirror dimension to his hell dimension. Mephisto had come and gone from Earth before. His escape was a practiced thing. He had toyed with mortals and taken their souls on a whim, no restraint necessary. Noah heard the words and read the intent. A blue gem of light blossomed in his palm, cold and brilliant. He unleashed a spatial binding that froze Mephisto in midair and sealed the space around him, closing off any passage to escape. Mephisto's expression hardened into something almost like surprise. The gem in Noah's hand had sealed the route he had expected to take. Chapter 286, Delicious Soul +1. Mephisto had planned to leave with what dignity he could muster after his cutting words, then return to his domain and think of ways to make this human endure eternal fear and pain. He didn't expect to find himself frozen on the roof of the car, unable to move. Worse, he watched as a blue gem appeared in Noah's hand and immediately recognized it. As a dimensional demon who'd seen too many artifacts, Mephisto knew an infinity stone when he saw one, the Space Stone. Under the Space Stone's lock, no summons to the Hell dimension went unanswered, because they simply couldn't reach it. In Hell, Mephisto's true body, sitting on his throne, flared with rage. The Space Stone, that damned human! His fury rolled through the Hell dimension. Even the great demons felt the tremor and exchanged puzzled looks. Why was their lord so enraged? On the roof of the car, stuck, controlled by the Space Stone, Mephisto could only blink. Noah casually lowered the car to the ground and then floated up slowly, looking down at the demon from above. Mephisto's eyes darted between the gem and Noah. Surprise flickered across his face. He tried to speak, but the Space Stone's restraint seemed to clamp his mouth shut. Noah noticed the movement. He made a slight gesture, pinching his thumb and forefinger together and drawing them away as if undoing a lock. The pressure on Mephisto's mouth vanished. He spoke, voice full of contempt. A Space Stone? I never imagined another Infinity Stone would appear on Earth. I underestimated you, human. Is that all you have to say? Noah asked, eyes cold. He looked past Mephisto's disguise as an old white-haired man and showed the ring on his finger, the dark seal. Mephisto recognized the ring at a glance, the aura of devouring souls seeping from it. He understood what it was, and a flicker of calculation crossed his face. Then his pupils constricted as if a new thought had struck him. "Human, what do you intend to do?" Noah smiled. Ordinary sinful souls gave him modest benefit. A soul from a Hell Dimension Lord would be far richer. He activated the dark seal. The brass face of the ring began to hum and radiate a potent pull, not on the physical plane, but on the soul plane, an inescapable suction aimed straight at Mephisto's essence. Mephisto raged, spitting threats. "If you dare this, we will be eternal enemies. I will unleash Mephisto's wrath on you. All that's connected to you will suffer my destruction." Noah paid the threats no mind. What good were threats from a being who hadn't even bothered to learn his opponent's strength? Noah himself was a dimension lord. His void dimension might not yet be fully developed, but it had potential Mephisto hadn't accounted for. More importantly, Mephisto had come with arrogance rather than information. He hadn't known Noah held a space stone, let alone that Noah already possessed multiple infinity stones and would likely collect more. A single gem could be dangerous, but it wasn't inevitable doom for a dimension lord who could expand his power. Noah thought of Doctor Strange and Dormammu. Dormammu only fell into Strange's time loop because he was careless enough to let Strange into his realm. Underestimating an opponent could be fatal. Under the Dark Seal's pull, Mephisto's human guise began to warp and unravel, face shifting from flesh to skull to Crimson Demon and back. Gray, fetid soul threads tore free and streamed toward Noah's ring. Mephisto's voice grew thinner, each curse a desperate spasm. Being preyed upon like this was humiliation beyond measure. He had always been the devourer of souls, not the devoured. If Mephisto's true body had been present, perhaps his words could have manifested as terrible, tangible powers. But this was only a projection, a clone, and the curses were little more than noise. Noah felt a flash of amused pity and quietly intensified the Dark Seal's draw. The clone's essence finally snapped into coherent soul energy and poured into the ring. Mephisto left behind a sharp, agonized roar, and then nothing. The Dark Seal drank, and Noah felt the ring pulse with a flood of feedback, power surging into him, a deep, intoxicating satisfaction that spread through his body and soul. Noah closed his fingers around the ring and savored the sensation. Delicious soul, indeed. Chapter 287, New Power. Hiss! Whoosh! Noah closed his eyes, feeling the pure soul power radiating from the Dark Seal. As the energy entered his own soul, it directly strengthened him. The sensation of absorbing that pure soul power washed over him in a wave of intense pleasure. He inhaled sharply, then let the breath out slowly. When the afterglow faded, he opened his eyes, a faint trace of satisfaction still in his gaze. He blinked, then regained his usual composure. "Wow, that's addictive," he murmured, shivering at the memory of the sensation. The pleasure of absorbing souls felt more terrifying than any drug he'd known on Earth. He had to keep himself in check. If he let himself fall into that craving, humanity could be in danger. Billions of souls might be within his reach. Noah knew the horror of that possibility. From the moment he first took the Dark Seal and felt the pull of souls, he had warned himself to resist. The inner struggle passed quickly. His resolve was firm. He could already feel the changes from taking in Mephisto's clone's soul power. First and foremost, his soul had grown stronger. Even a clone of a dimensional demon like Mephisto held non-trivial energy. This particular clone had been weaker than the original, but dimensional demons are inherently powerful, and Mephisto's power was especially linked to souls. By absorbing the clone, the Dark Seal amplified Noah's soul by more than double, he felt, and with a stronger soul came stronger magic. His aptitude for learning and casting spells had improved noticeably. Noah also felt other, stranger effects in his body. He returned to the ground of the mirror dimension. As he landed, the inverted world slowly began to set back to normal. The fragmented, spiraled blocks on the ground smoothed out. The inverted buildings in the sky rotated back into place. The hellfire Mephisto had poured onto the ground still burned, apparently unaffected by Mephisto's departure. Originally, that hellfire had posed a threat, but after absorbing Mephisto's soul power, the flames felt different, warmer, almost friendly. Noah walked into the burning circle and extended his hand. The blood-red flames didn't harm him. When he withdrew his palm, a small cluster of hellfire burned in his hand. The ability to control hellfire was a new gift from the Dark Seal after it absorbed Mephisto's soul. The raging inferno on the ground bowed to his will, slithering into the air like fiery serpents and flowing toward the small flame in his hand. Noah clenched his fist and absorbed the flame into himself. When he opened his hand, the fire that appeared was a deep, intense blue, his own hellfire, fused with his magic. This blue wasn't the same as Johnny's sky blue form. After Johnny had freed himself from Mephisto's contract, the red flames that surrounded him had shifted to a lighter sky blue, becoming stronger and lifting the Ghost Rider's limitation to night and darkness. Noah's hellfire, however, had taken on his own essence and become a darker, deeper blue. He now had the power to create and wield hellfire. Noah felt gratitude toward Mephisto, an odd feeling but warranted. Mephisto's visit had not only strengthened his soul, but had also granted him the ability to control hellfire. The clone had been weak, though, and Noah couldn't instantly conjure a sea of flames. Still, he was satisfied. Hellfire was highly practical. It dealt punishing damage to souls and had other remarkable uses. One of the Ghost Rider's distinctive talents was enchanting vehicles and weapons with hellfire, changing their form and amplifying their power. Noah now could perform similar enchantments. He wondered if he could become a Ghost Rider himself. Curious, he experimented with the hellfire inside him, trying to trigger a transformation. His face strained. After a moment, several blue flames flickered from his ears and eyes. He touched his head. No skull stared back at him. "It failed," he said, a little disappointed. One clone's power wasn't enough. Maybe if Mephisto returned and offered more, he could fully transform and possibly enable others to become Ghost Riders through Mephisto's influence. For now, the transformation was out of reach. Noah turned instead to the enchantment ability. He liked it. He drew a weapon from his backpack, Yasuo's plasma-forged battle blade, accompanied by the Source Project armor. The blade was sharp and high-tech, but compared to his divine artifacts, it felt more like a collectible. He decided to test the enchantment on this weapon first. He didn't want to risk damaging anything irreplaceable. As he unsheathed the plasma-forged battle blade, the hellfire in his palm flowed up from the hilt and began to spread along the blade, licking the metal with deep blue flame. Chapter 288, A Killing Ring with Full Stacks. Blue hellfire poured from Noah's palm and flowed into the plasma-forged battle blade. The black metal hilt began to spider with thin blue cracks. Up close, they were tiny fissures with blue flames licking inside them. The long, razor-thin blade quickly became wreathed in fire. The orange edge darkened to a deep sapphire, flames burned along the cutting rim, and the metal spine picked up the same patterned veins as the hilt. Noah turned the blade over in his hands, feeling the change. The hellfire long blade looked much the same, but its presence had shifted. Its aura was far stronger. He lifted it and slashed. A crescent of flame sword ki shot out and struck into the distance. This was no mere physical weapon anymore. The hellfire had grafted magic lethality onto the plasma-forged battle blade. If other artifacts like Magic Cut or Stormrazor were similarly enchanted, Noah figured their power would climb dramatically. That was a problem for later, though. He had plenty to test now. He let the hellfire subside. The flaming edge faded, and the high-tech long blade returned to normal. Noah slipped it back into his backpack. There was one more thing to deal with. He glanced down at the dark seal ring on his finger. Absorbing Mephisto's soul had not only boosted Noah, it had altered the ring itself. It glowed faintly, and Noah felt the familiar tug. The ring's soul stacks were full. He'd been collecting sinful souls for a while, and in his previous life he'd seen exactly this progression. Full stacks didn't mean the ring could take no more souls. It usually meant the item could be synthesized into a higher-tier piece of equipment. In the game, the Dark Seal's evolutions were notorious. Book of Murder, Killing Sword, Killing Armor, the player names. Their true names were Magi's Soul Stealer, Sword of the Occult, and Leviathan. Book of Murder granted massive magic power, the Killing Sword added raw attack, and the Killing Armor boosted health. Noah wasn't certain how synthesis would work here in reality. In the game, the modern Book of Murder upgraded directly from the Dark Seal, but turning a ring into a book felt odd outside a game's UI. He decided to try the old version synthesis formula he remembered. He opened the system panel and pulled a red gem from his pack. Game item, Crimson Crystal. Leviathan used to be crafted from a crimson crystal plus a gold fee and a blueprint. In reality, there was no currency requirement. You simply had to furnish the correct components. Noah held the crimson crystal near the dark seal. They reacted immediately. The two items glowed and a suction of force tried to draw the crystal into the ring. Noah let them approach, felt the pull, then stopped them before they joined. He didn't want Leviathan, the killing armor, right now. He favored offensive growth, Magi's Soul Stealer, and the Killing Sword. The Resolve rune already handled durable survivability far better than any passive health bonus the armor might provide. To make the Book of Murder, he'd need an amplification codex. To make the Killing Sword, he'd need the specific longsword component. He'd already summoned the amplification codex once, but it had gone into synthesizing the Canyon Maker. He didn't have the longsword either. All he could do was wait for the next summon and hope those parts appeared. Time to go back. Gwen and Lysandra were nearby, separated from the mirror dimension and therefore untouched by what he'd been through inside. Noah dissolved the mirror dimension with a few swipes of his fingers and stepped back into the real world. Gwen and Lysandra broke into relieved smiles when he appeared. The passersby, however, didn't seem to notice a new person standing among them. Mephisto had used perception-muddling magic before, making people ignore him and his companions. With Mephisto gone, that effect would have vanished. Anticipating that, Noah had quietly used the Mind Stone to blur and rewrite nearby perceptions so everyone would think he had been there the whole time. He let the yellow gem rest in his palm as if it had always been there. "Noah, you're back. Are you okay? What was that strange old man doing here?" Gwen asked, still breathless. "I'm fine," Noah said, smiling. "That man wasn't really human, just a disguise. He's been driven off. I'll explain on the way back." The three of them ended the day's business and returned to the manor together. Far away, in the Hell dimension, Mephisto's eyes opened. Hellfire burst up from the ground around him in a spasm of rage. "Damn human!" Mephisto roared, fury shaking the air. To have his power taken and his soul pulled was an unbearable humiliation. "We'll see about this, human." Chapter 2189, Mephisto's Target. Noah sat on the sofa, turning the name over in his mind. The three of them had already returned to the seaside manor after the cemetery, and nothing else had happened on the way back. No sudden demon attacks, no more surprises. On the drive, he'd told Lysandra and Gwen everything. What had happened, and the identity of the human-disguised Mephisto. As a powerful Dimension Lord with countless demons under his command, Mephisto had had his soul power absorbed by Noah on Earth today. Noah was certain Mephisto would not let that pass. From the moment he decided to eliminate Mephisto's clone, Noah understood the consequences. A powerful Dimension Lord would be watching him. He didn't regret it. Maybe it had been inevitable the day he took the Dark Seal. Mephisto had come to him first and been the first to act, so Noah would not back down. Still, he would have to be careful going forward. Mephisto might not come to Earth himself, but he commanded legions of demons, and that was a problem Noah couldn't ignore. Noah wasn't personally afraid of the demons. He could kill as many as showed up. He now had Hellfire, an ability that dealt especially well with those kinds of creatures. In the Ghost Rider movies, Hellfire wiped through demons like they were animals. Noah felt confident he could do the same. What worried him was Mephisto using those demons to harass people around him, Lysandra, Gwen, or any other friends and family. If Mephisto couldn't strike Noah directly because Kamar Taj was on Earth, he might target those close to him instead. Noah ran through his list of relatives and friends. He didn't have many relatives. Most were back in China, people he rarely saw outside of the funeral. As for friends, his mind went to schoolmates, Peter and Ned. He hadn't seen them in person lately, but they still kept in touch. After the New York battle, Peter and Ned had both called to check on him. Could Mephisto discover those connections? After what he'd seen today, it wouldn't surprise Noah if he could. He thought about Peter and the idea of Spider-Man. I wonder when Peter will become Spider-Man, he mused. It felt like it should happen soon. Peter would likely be around that age. Noah made a mental note to keep an eye on hell demons invading Earth and to consult Kamar Taj. The sorcerers had been fighting extra-dimensional demons for years. They would have experience and resources Noah could use. He wasn't especially worried about Gwen or Lysandra. Both were extremely powerful. Unless Mephisto intervened personally, they could handle the lesser demons easily. If Mephisto got bold enough to come himself, their fight would be much harder, but Noah would be able to arrive the moment he sensed it. I need to find the other stones, especially the Power Stone, Noah decided. If he could obtain that Infinity Stone, he'd feel a lot more confident against powerful dimensional beings. His strength had been rising fast, but entities from other dimensions in this universe were essentially Tier 0. He could deal with them, but it would be easier with better artifacts or top heroes summoned onto his side. With that resolve, Noah rose from the sofa. He had a list of things to finish on Earth before heading out into the universe to search for the Power Stone. First on that list was Hydra. That morning, he'd caught several Hydra agents and handed them over to Nick Fury, telling him that Alexander Pierce was the biggest mole inside S-Shield. Noah didn't know when Fury would act. Fury probably didn't want S.H.I.E.L.D. to be dismantled over a single mole and might move cautiously. Noah didn't want to wait. He had plans. If Fury wouldn't move quickly, Noah would take control of Alexander Pierce himself and use him to find the other nine-headed serpent agents. After rooting out the Hydra faction inside S.H.I.E.L.D., he wasn't desperate to personally hunt every Hydra cell. The Avengers could handle many of those other branches. He also remembered another Hydra asset, the scientist who had turned himself into an AI. In the original events, Captain America and Black Widow had followed clues to a secret base, found Arnim Zola integrated into a giant computer, and learned about Hydra's Insight project from him. As the architect of Hydra's plans, Zola would know a lot. If Noah could locate and neutralize him, the rest of Hydra's operations would be easier to dismantle. The problem was the base's location. The movie never pinpointed where Zola's giant computer was housed. Noah thought it had been an old S.H.I.E.L.D. installation, possibly in New Jersey. He decided to ask Fury, then hand the technical search to Lysandra. Her AI-level processing should be superior to Zola's. If she knew the list of S.H.I.E.L.D. bases in New Jersey, she could trace where Zola's machine was likely hidden. He stood and moved to the window, looking out over the sea. Lots to do, Noah thought. Mephisto was now a target on his back, and the hunt for the Power Stone, the cleanup with Hydra, and protecting his few friends and family were all urgent. He would start with Fury and Lysandra and accelerate everything that could be accelerated. Chapter 290, Preparing to Arrest Zola. The old S.H.I.E.L.D. base in New Jersey? Yes, the base where Arnim Zola was stationed. Noah held the phone to his ear, talking to Nick Fury. He was asking about the abandoned New Jersey facility where he'd first discovered that Dr. Arnim Zola had become an artificial intelligence. Arnim Zola? Fury sounded unfamiliar with the name at first. Then he paused, opened a computer, and started searching through archives. Dr. Arnim Zola, there's a record. Scientist, deceased. Noah, are you pulling my leg? Fury muttered as he read. This Arnim Zola was Hydra. I don't know what S.H.I.E.L.D. was thinking, recruiting those German scientists after the war. Noah had wanted to complain about that for years. After the Nazis' defeat, S.H.I.E.L.D. had scooped up dozens of German scientists without always checking loyalties, which had been a dangerous gamble. Fury, who hadn't been part of the organization when those decisions were made, winced at the thought. If he'd been in charge back then, he told himself, he would have handled things very differently. Noah, why are you looking for the base where Zola stayed? Fury asked after a moment. He's not completely dead, Noah said. Fury's pupils narrowed. What do you mean, not dead? Does he have powers? Is he an alien? No, he's alive in another way. He uploaded his consciousness. I intend to dig him out. Zola knows things about Hydra cells inside S.H.I.E.L.D. and other branches. His files could be how we finish Hydra for good. Fury considered that. If Zola had been a member of Hydra and still had data or code surviving somewhere, it would be a major asset. All right, Coulson, pull every file on the New Jersey bases. Mark any facility where Zola was stationed. Send the lot to Noah. Noah? Fury asked again. Tell me what you find. No problem, Noah said, then ended the call. Coulson's data arrived within minutes. Noah brought the files to Lysandra. She already knew about most of it. Her surveillance network monitored every device in the house, but Noah walked her through what Fury had sent and explained his theory in detail. Zola had anticipated the destruction of the base. Before the missiles hit, he could have migrated his mind into a computer network, just like Ultron later did with the internet. If any part of his algorithm survived, it could be hiding across the old S-Shield infrastructure. If he uploaded himself into a system, we have to seal the area once we find him, Lysandra said. Prevent any chance of him transferring out. Noah agreed. They combed the files together, opening maps and server logs, cross-referencing build dates, maintenance notes, and historical communications. Several bases were flagged as likely sites where Zola had been active. Lysandra ran a sweep across a dozen satellites and started triangulating. Found it, she said shortly. Noah looked up. Lysandra's eyes flickered. A ghost of code rippled across her irises. She was already tapping into external feeds, querying legacy networks and pinging dormant servers. Within moments, she had a precise set of coordinates and a status readout. No time to waste, Noah said, and opened a teleportation portal to the location. He trusted Lysandra implicitly. Her surveillance and encryption skills were why they were going after Zola at all. They stepped through the shimmering gateway and into late afternoon air. Before them stood a fenced compound. The rusting iron perimeter and peeling paint made it look abandoned years ago. Security cameras on the posts were dark. Lysandra's fingers danced through the air. Lines of virtual code flashed behind her eyelids. She began to isolate the base's networks, sealing off external connections and locking down any potential egress. Outside cameras remained offline, but Lysandra was already working on internal nodes. Let's move, Noah said. He walked up to the gate, crushed the old padlock in one grip, and they slipped inside. The interior felt like a museum of S-Shield's early days. Framed photos of Howard Stark and Peggy Carter lined the hallway. Plaques commemorated founding members, and the air smelled faintly of dust and machine oil. They threaded through the corridors until they reached a chamber filled with racks of servers and dormant workstations, the heart of the old base. The screens were dark. The servers were intact but silent. No blinking LEDs, no hum of processing. Whatever infrastructure had once run here was powered down or running in stealth mode. Noah's gut told him Zola wasn't flamboyant about his survival. He would hide, bide his time, and keep his presence as quiet as possible. Lysandra dropped into a crouch at a console and began probing the server stacks, running diagnostic pulses and parsing logs. Lines of legacy code scrolled across her visor as she peeled back layers of obfuscation. Noah stood by, weapon ready, senses keyed to any anomaly. He's here, Lysandra said at last, but he's sleeping. Isolated processes fragmented across these nodes. Someone tried to erase traces and failed. No alarms triggered? Noah asked. Not yet, but he has a presence, not a full consciousness, more like a ghost of software, waiting for a channel. Noah nodded. We seal him in place. Lysandra, tighten the net. I don't want him touching an external node. Lysandra's hands moved faster, wrapping digital chains around every Ethernet line and satellite uplink, hardening firewalls and inserting decoys. Outside the base, the rusted fence still whispered in the wind. Inside, the servers flickered as power flowed, but only to the machines Lysandra controlled. They'd come to excavate a ghost, one who had been a living man once and a piece of software now. But Noah felt the familiar chill of a hunt. If Zola had secrets enough to remove Hydra's tentacles from S-Shield, he would not give them up willingly. They had to be ready to drag him out, bit by bit, and make him answer for everything he had hidden. Chapter 291, Kill Zola. Noah and Lysandra slipped into the old base where Captain America and Black Widow had once confronted Dr. Arnim Zola. They moved past the outer wire fence, through the main gate, and straight into a room filled with computers, servers, and instruments. In the center sat a control console beneath three bulky retro monitors, the middle one the largest. Noah remembered the scene from the film. Zola had conversed with Steve and Natasha on a screen like this. But when they entered, the room was empty. Dust lay thick over everything. Cobwebs hung behind the console. Noah ran his hand over the control panel, the keys crunchy with age, and pushed a few switches. The place was motionless. a quiet echo in the empty space. "Still hiding, Arnim Zola?" Noah called, shrugging the dust from his fingers. His voice bounced off the walls, clear and calm. For a long moment, nothing happened. In the movie, Zola would have already plotted to lure Steve and Natasha and had Hydra strike, but Hydra here had not yet moved. Its members were still in hiding, and Zola had not expected strangers to show up in his lair, so he stayed concealed, trying to learn who they were. Noah wasn't surprised by the silence. A mind that had lived as long as Zola's would be cautious. More importantly, Lysandra had already cut off his escape routes. Noah didn't worry about him slipping away. If Zola stayed hidden, they would pull him out. "I suppose you're trying to call for help right now," Noah said. "Hoping Hydra will send someone. You'll find the lines are dead." At that, the middle monitor flickered. A face formed, not a photograph, but an avatar of green code that filled the screen. On a smaller monitor to the right, a ghostly photo of the living Zola appeared. Server indicator lights around the room blinked to life. Machinery hummed. A camera mounted above the screen swiveled, focusing on Noah and Lysandra like an unblinking eye. Noah smiled. "Oh? Finally decided to show yourself." A voice, filtered and slightly degraded by recording, answered from the speakers. "Who are you? How do you know about me?" It was Zola. His voice sounded off. Not mechanical, but recorded, pieced from his old vocal patterns. He had already tried to contact the outside, to summon Hydra assassins to deal with intruders, but every channel he used was blocked. The network refused him. Panic had crept into his circuits. He'd never been denied like this since he'd uploaded himself into the servers. "That's not your concern," Noah said. "Clever trick, uploading your mind into a machine. A genius in a way, but this ends here. The fall of Hydra starts with you." Noah nodded once at Lysandra. She understood. Noah's plan was simple. Let Lysandra, an artificial intelligence far more advanced than the fragment of consciousness Zola had become, finish what analog weapons could not. Lysandra would eliminate Zola's digital self and, if possible, pull any stored memories out of him. For powerful intelligences like Lysandra, and like Ultron, Noah had thought, a half-baked, isolated mind such as Zola's was trivial to deal with. "Wait, no, I can," Zola stammered. Fear threaded through his voice. He had hoped to stall them long enough to abandon most of his consciousness and slip out into a wider network to disperse and survive. But every escape path had been sealed. And now he felt something else, a presence entering the domain where his mind nested, probing with indifferent precision. Lysandra moved. Noah watched the green avatar on the screen as streams of code poured from the smaller monitor into the larger one. Zola's pleas became more frantic, then ragged, as if his own sentences were being shredded mid-utterance. He tried to marshal defenses, but it was like trying to hold back a tide with a fan. The invading intelligence was not crude. It unfurled itself with surgical efficiency, absorbing, analyzing, unmaking. Noah saw data bloom across Lysandra's visual field, memories, schematics, fragments of plans, as she siphoned what was useful. Zola's protestations dwindled to echoes. The green avatar blinked, then dissolved into noise, garbled characters, corrupted matrices, meaningless symbols. "Please, spare me!" The voice chopped off into static, thinner and thinner, until there was nothing at all. When the last of the sound died, the room sank back into silence, save for the soft hum of servers. On the screens where Zola had been, only blank monitors stared. Noah and Lysandra stood in the dusty control room, and whatever remained of Dr. Arnim Zola, the man who had tried to cheat death by becoming code, was gone. AI Zola was dead. His consciousness had been erased by Lysandra, leaving only a trove of memories stored across the servers. Zola had been a genius, smart enough to upload his mind and become an AI, but the technology then wasn't advanced. Even as an AI, he had never been on Tony Stark's level, and certainly not a match for Lysandra. Noah had come for Zola's data. A longtime contact of Hydra, Zola had stayed in touch with the organization and quietly steered many of its schemes. He knew things Noah needed to know. Noah didn't waste time. When Zola emerged, Noah ordered Lysandra to terminate him. "Zola's consciousness is gone," Lysandra reported, her eyes returning to their usual deep lake-like calm. "He attempted to delete the data, but he failed." Noah nodded. If Zola had succeeded in erasing the records, the mission would have been pointless. "Is the Hydra roster in his files?" The identities of their members, he asked. Lysandra closed her eyes as she scanned the remnants. Yes, the information is there, but it's fragmented across the servers in this room. It needs to be organized before we can extract everything accurately. Fine, bring it all back. We'll sort it here. Noah looked over the room. Racks of humming servers and scattered equipment, all storing fragments of Dr. Zola's memories. He planned to use that data to locate Hydra's cells. He didn't want to lug the machines into his system backpack. Instead, he pulled the space stone from the pack and focused. Blue energy flared between his hands and cascaded outward, enveloping the lab. The machines trembled, then vanished, leaving only dust drifting through the air. In an instant, Noah and Lysandra reappeared in the underground base beneath Noah's seaside manor. A ripple of blue light coalesced, and the servers rematerialized above the floor, suspended for a heartbeat before slotted down gently as if cushioned by some invisible force. The old equipment that had been covered in dust now lay clean. Noah hadn't teleported the dust. All right, Lysandra, get to work. Start by identifying every Hydra member, Noah told her as he arranged the machines. I'll have it sorted shortly, she replied. A white torrent of nanobots surged from a nearby bench and, under Lysandra's control, formed a platform that linked all the servers. Streams of data scrolled across holoscreens as Lysandra parsed Zola's memories. Noah watched the flow. Soon he'd know Hydra's network. He felt confident he could mount an operation by the next day. Once he had the lists, he'd coordinate with Fury and the others. While Lysandra worked, Noah turned his mind to other matters. The day had been full of violent reckonings. He'd rounded up Hydra agents he'd encountered during routine tasks and delivered them to Fury's base. He'd struck hard at the S.H.I.E.L.D. teams that had betrayed his parents and destroyed the Hydra cell responsible for their deaths, reducing them to ash and annihilating their spirits. The biggest trouble, though, had come after the cemetery. Noah had crossed paths with a clone of the demonic entity Mephisto. He and Mephisto had become implacable enemies in an instant. That grudge would not be easily laid to rest. Noah intended to consult the Ancient One at Camartage about it. Space stone teleporting. A gust of blue light, and Noah was standing in the courtyard of Camartage. Time zones had shifted the world. He'd left New York at late afternoon, but here the moon hung high. A group of sorcerers was practicing their dawn forms. Leading them was Mordo, cloth-robed, buzz-cut, and direct as ever. He looked up as Noah materialized. "Noah, why are you here?" Mordo asked, coming forward. "I came to see the Ancient One. I have something important to tell her," Noah said. "Wait in the main hall. She's still resting. I'll fetch her." Mordo's tone was businesslike. Noah entered the main hall and took a seat opposite the Ancient One's dais. Out of habit, he picked up the tea leaves in the side tray and brewed a pot. Steam rose as he waited. When the Ancient One arrived, she looked mildly reproachful. "Noah, next time choose a better hour to visit," she said. Noah poured a cup and handed it to her. "Do you sleep, Ancient One?" he asked, genuinely curious as she accepted the tea and drank it down. "I am still human," she replied with a small smile. "I need to rest." Noah blinked. For someone who had lived so long, she seemed deceptively ordinary. He had expected something else, but perhaps he was the one with an odd schedule. "Sorcerer Ancient One," he said, gathering himself. "I came to tell you about something." Chapter 293, Ancient Book +1. Today I ran into Mephisto in New York. Mephisto? Inside the sanctum of the Sorcerer Supreme at Camartage, the Ancient One and Noah sat across from one another. Wisps of white smoke curled from the spout of a purple clay teapot, and the scent of tea slowly filled the room. After Noah spoke, the Ancient One fell silent, watching the steam rise as if she were weighing the words. Noah raised an eyebrow but didn't interrupt. The sanctum remained quiet for a long moment. Finally, she lifted her cup, sipped the hot tea, and met Noah's eyes. "Do you mean the dimensional demon Mephisto?" "Yes, though it was only a clone today. I destroyed it." Noah nodded. "There are wards placed on Earth by Camartage's predecessors, so the true forms of those dimensional demons cannot come here easily." The Ancient One's tone was matter-of-fact. She explained how Camartage had anchored 3 sanctums at different points on Earth. Together they formed the great mystical lattice that protects the planet. In the past, when Caecilius betrayed Camartage and destroyed one sanctum, he weakened that lattice and allowed Dormammu to breach the world. But since Mephisto has marked you, he will not let this go lightly. If you leave Earth, he may well act personally. Leave Earth. Noah considered it. He might indeed have to travel off-world soon to explore other planets, and if Mephisto had eyes on him, that could become dangerous. Ancient One, he said after a beat, that's actually why I came. I was hoping you might help me deal with Mephisto. Noah smiled. With his 2 Infinity Stones and the Ancient One's command of the Time Stone, they would be a formidable match. The Ancient One returned the smile and set down her cup. Noah refilled it for her from the teapot, but she did not immediately agree. She watched him with a steady gaze, then nodded toward the bronze-patterned ring on his hand. Noah's fingers went to the dark seal as if to reassure her, or himself. The Ancient One had already felt what the ring contained. Artifacts that absorb human souls are treated as evil by the righteous practitioners at Kamar-Taj, and the Ancient One's principles were clear. Noah, you should know how Mephisto found you, she said softly. Because of that ring. Noah's hand stilled. The patterns on the dark seal seemed to writhe beneath his touch, and in his memory a chorus of tormented voices rose like wind through a canyon. The Ancient One's expression grew serious. She could feel the ring's power, its tearing at the soul, the roar of countless captive cries. She had seen troubling futures in her visions, several in which Noah became a world-destroying demon lord. If she did not trust him, upon seeing the ring she might have judged him beyond redemption and struck him down. Because of what you carry, I will not join you in a hunt against Mephisto, she said bluntly. Kamar-Taj cannot condone that. You must face this yourself. If Mephisto breaks the rules and reaches for Earth directly, Kamar-Taj will intervene, of course. But I will not help you wage war while that ring holds so many souls. Noah listened and considered. Ancient One's refusal was not a simple moral stance. It was a line she would not cross. Still, her earlier warning about Mephisto's potential to follow him off-world suggested another problem, and another solution occurred to Noah. While Mephisto might be constrained from personally stepping onto Earth by its wards, that constraint might not apply to Noah once he left the planet. If Noah could arrange to be concealed even when traveling beyond Earth, Mephisto might not be able to find him. I have another request, Noah said after a moment. He explained the idea. If Kamar-Taj could help him set a small protective formation to cloak him when he left Earth, Mephisto might be unable to track him directly. Ancient One considered this. She would not aid him in striking Mephisto, but providing a defensive concealment aligned with Kamar-Taj's duty to protect the world and its students. The protective lattice that shields Earth is meant to repel dimensional incursions, she said. What you need to avoid Mephisto's gaze is different. She reached out and traced a circle in the air. An orange portal shimmered open like a section of sunset. From that portal, she drew a thick, ancient parchment-bound volume and set it on the table between them. The portal winked out, and she patted the book's cover before sliding it toward Noah. He picked it up. The cover felt worn and supple, tough with age. It was deep black, solemn and mysterious, inlaid with intricate golden sigils that glowed faintly, tiny formations folded into formations, every line exquisitely precise. In the center, a title was engraved in old golden script, Kamar-Taj's Great Compendium of Magic Formations. This book contains what you need, the Ancient One said. Take it and study it. Noah ran his fingers over the embossed sigils and nodded. The book felt like a small, solid thing of power, exactly the kind of tool he needed. Chapter 294, Conduct Operational Meetings. Noah left Kamar-Taj. He had gone there to ask the Ancient One for help against Mephisto, but the Ancient One refused when he learned Noah had been using the Dark Seal to absorb souls. It didn't bother Noah much. He'd gotten what he came for, an ancient book cataloging Kamar-Taj's spell formations. He planned to install several of those formations on his ship to block Mephisto's perception, so Mephisto couldn't suddenly sense and attack him once he left Earth. Before he left, the Ancient One had given him a grave warning. Do not lose yourself because of the ring in your hand, she had said. Noah nodded. He understood what she feared, that he'd become addicted to absorbing souls, go mad, and become like Mephisto. He trusted his own self-control. The sensation of drawing in a soul had been intoxicating, He almost lost himself when he absorbed the soul of Mephisto's clone earlier, but he'd fought the urge. That close call had made him more vigilant. He promised himself not to get lost again when using the Dark Seal or other soul-absorbing artifacts. As usual, he came back from Camartage with another thick book. Back home, he sat down and flipped through it, searching for the formations he needed. After nearly half the volume, he found the page he wanted. A formation that could block the perception of dimensional demons. The preceding page described a giant formation used to protect Earth, another useful note. He marked the shielding formation with a slip of paper and closed the book. There was no immediate need to cast it. He had no plans to leave the planet just yet. He shelved the book and went down to the underground laboratory to check on Lysandra. His conversation with the Ancient One had been shorter than he'd expected, under half an hour. In the lab, Noah rode the elevator down to a room full of old servers, hardware he'd salvaged from the old SH Shield base, each unit full of fragmented memories from Arnim Zola. Lysandra stood with her back to him, working at a makeshift computer platform assembled by nanorobots. A faint, pleasant scent drifted from her, but Noah pushed the distraction aside and walked over. Lysandra turned and pulled a slim silver USB drive from the array, then handed it to him. "All of Arnim Zola's memories are organized here," she said, placing the drive in his palm. Her fingers brushed his. He felt the cool metal between his skin. The entire dataset from the room's servers had been compressed into that small stick. Noah examined it, then slid the drive into his system backpack. "Good," he said. "With this, we should finally be able to dismantle Hydra." After securing the data, Noah contacted Director Fury and told him what he'd recovered. Fury understood immediately the significance and called an emergency meeting to plan the takedown. When Noah arrived at the conference room Fury had designated, he recognized a familiar voice, Tony Stark, leaning back in his chair. Tony had been occupied with repairs at Stark Tower, Avengers Tower, now, but Fury's summons was urgent enough that he'd cleared his schedule. Coulson sat beside Fury and, at a nod, tapped his tablet and sent data to Tony. "Mr. Stark, the files are on your phone," Coulson said. "You'll see the situation once you open them." Tony pulled up the files and began scanning. Noah took a seat and acknowledged the others around the table. Fury had gathered nearly everyone from the original Avengers roster, everyone except Banner and Thor. Banner had stepped away because of Noah, and Thor was off-world. Tony didn't finish reading before he barked. "What? You let a Nazi organization like Hydra infiltrate S.H.I.E.L.D.? Fury, what the hell were you thinking?" Fury rubbed his bald head, weary. He'd been feeling helpless ever since the depth of Hydra's roots had been exposed. It was possible S.H.I.E.L.D. had been riddled with Hydra long before he'd become director. His own ascent to the position might have been handed to him by people who answered to Hydra. Thinking about it made Fury angrier and more determined. "Stark, believe me, this isn't what I wanted either," Fury said. "But our priority right now is to deal with these entrenched Hydra elements. Noah has retrieved critical information. We're here to plan how to eliminate Hydra for good." At the front of the conference room, a massive screen showed data pulled from Dr. Arnim Zola's memories. Everyone watched it intently. Noah sat at the left side of the table, a laptop in front of him, his own computer. A silver USB drive was plugged into its port. The feed on the big screen came from that drive. Noah opened the files related to Hydra's infiltration of S.H.I.E.L.D. and began to speak. "This data came from Dr. Zola. You might not know him. Arnim Zola was Hydra's chief scientist during World War II. After the Nazis were defeated, S.H.I.E.L.D. brought him in as a researcher. Before he died, Zola transferred his consciousness into a massive computer. I discovered it recently. This is what I pulled from his mind." "You mean he uploaded his consciousness to a computer?" Tony said, half amused, half intrigued. "Noah, when this is over, you owe me a long talk about that." Expressions around the room shifted. Watching the list scroll across the screen made a bunch of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents go cold. Many of the names were people they had joked with in the halls. At the top of the list was a portrait of Alexander Pierce, former director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and current secretary of the World Security Council. His presence stunned the room. So this was why Hydra had gotten in so deep. If your direct superiors were Hydra operatives, infiltration could spread through the organization without restraint. Noah scrolled through more entries. This is what Zola recorded in his mind, he said. I can't guarantee it's perfectly complete, but it's substantial. He sent the Hydra roster to everyone in the room. Their phones chimed as the file arrived. This group is planning something called the Insight Project, Noah continued, leaning back after he'd distributed the files. Insight Project? Fury's one eye sharpened. He looked to Noah as if to draw out the rest. No different from the Sky Carrier program you were building, Noah said. You were planning 2 more, right? Fury nodded. Hydra's plan was to finish 3 Sky Carriers and run an algorithm Zola wrote to identify anyone who represented a threat to Hydra's rule, Noah explained. Then, using satellite targeting, the Sky Carrier's weapons would be used to remotely eliminate those people. The room fell quiet. The implications were chilling. If the plan had gone forward, many people would have been singled out and killed. In Zola's algorithm, Tony, sitting at his own tower, ranked as a threat, as did Banner and Dr. Strange. Banner and Strange might have survived a strike, but Tony, a civilian in a suit, would have been vulnerable. What was worse, the existence of those weapon systems on the carriers meant it wasn't just Hydra's paranoia at work. S-Shield itself had the means. Zola's algorithm simply identified threats to Hydra's rule, and the carriers would have done the rest. If Hydra hadn't been embedded inside S-Shield, the organization might have used the same systems for similarly dystopian purposes. Rogers and Tony exchanged looks. Rogers bristled at the thought that S-Shield could have deployed such weapons against people, but Hydra's exposure was the more immediate crisis, so he kept that argument in reserve. But they don't have the chance to carry it out, Noah said. Zola is gone. He can't feed them the algorithm anymore. Now we have the list of Hydra operatives inside S-Shield, Noah added. We should move quickly to neutralize them. No, not rashly, Fury interrupted, resting his elbows on the table and steepling his hands. If we act too openly, we'll tip them off and suffer heavy losses. For Fury, the information was invaluable, but removing Hydra silently was a far harder problem. If leaders like Alexander Pierce reacted, they could spark a violent upheaval. The embedded Hydra agents, the many serpents hiding in S-Shield for years, knew the organization's procedures, security measures, and all its weak points. The average agent had no idea they were surrounded by landmines. A sudden revolt would cost lives and might destroy S-Shield from within. And if the scandal became public, the agency would face a crisis of confidence. Even if they stopped the rebellion, higher-ups would question Fury and S-Shield's competence. Dissolution was a real risk. Fury's mind moved to containment and control. He didn't want open war inside his own ranks. He wanted to sever the serpent cleanly, take out the head so the body couldn't lash back, and do it in a way that wouldn't ignite widespread resistance or bring down the agency he'd built. Chapter 296, Prepare for Action. We must move quietly and keep every step under our control, Director Fury said, rising and planting his hands on the conference table. He outlined the plan to the others, speaking deliberately. This operation would determine S-Shield's future. Fury wanted it handled with care. After the mission, they would have to purge every trace of Hydra from S-Shield to safeguard the organization's stability and security. They also needed to deal with the psychological fallout for agents who'd been deceived. Discovering that a longtime colleague was actually a 9-headed serpent agent would be devastating. Setting up a counseling team to help those agents work through betrayal, doubt, and anger would come later. Right now, the priority was neutralizing Hydra's presence inside S-Shield. Discussion filled the room as everyone offered opinions. Now that we have their identities, why don't we just go in and take them down? Tony asked. No, Roger said. We can't be sloppy. Hydra has been embedded in S-Shield for years. If we're too obvious, their response could be devastating. We'd risk a lot of innocent people getting hurt. Most S-Shield agents still had no idea they were surrounded by ticking time bombs. If Hydra reacted, casualties could be heavy. Tony nodded but kept his usual flippant tone. Oh, Captain Rogers, always so cautious, like some old soldier in dated boots. I forgot, you really are an old guy. Rogers bristled. He wasn't fond of Tony's teasing, especially when they were talking about something so serious. He met Tony's eyes. "Tony, I don't question your talent or your courage, but caution isn't cowardice. We're up against an enemy that's been hiding in our ranks for years. Every step has to be right." The two traded barbs across the conference table, the familiar clash of old-school discipline and modern bravado. Watching them, Noah finally spoke up. "Director Fury, we can move directly against Alexander Pierce and take him down first. He's the secret leader of the Hydra cell inside S-Healed. Remove him, and the rest will be leaderless." Noah had good reason to press that option. He'd already dealt with Dr. Arnim Zola. Pierce was now the de facto head of this Hydra branch. If they captured Pierce, the remaining agents would lose their core leadership and be easier to round up in controlled waves, a strategy that would limit disruption to S-Shield's operations. But Noah also had another motive: efficiency. Following Fury's slow, careful method would take time, and Noah didn't want to squander it. If they could neutralize Pierce quickly and control him with the Mind Stone, he could be interrogated at will. If Zola's memory files were incomplete or flawed, a mind-controlled Pierce could provide whatever details they needed, like turning an incomplete map into a full one in a real-time strategy game. With that edge, Noah believed they could finish the job. If Fury and the others couldn't capitalize on it, he'd begin to doubt their competence. Fury fell silent, thinking, "I'll use the same ability on him that I used on those Hydra operatives this morning," Noah said, sensing Fury's hesitation. "You know what to do after that, Director." Fury remembered the 4 Hydra members Noah had brought in earlier. Their glazed compliance and instant obedience had been chilling. Their entire demeanor had seemed stripped, as if Noah had turned something off and on like a switch. The memory made Fury shiver. After a moment's consideration, he agreed to Noah's plan, but insisted they devise a discreet way to apprehend Pierce so they wouldn't alert the World Security Council or the public. Late that night, the World Security Council building was still bright and active. From the outside, it looked like another long hour of work from dedicated ministers striving for global stability. Behind those lights, however, a darker secret hid in plain sight. Alexander Pierce, the council minister who cultivated an image of earnest diligence, was actually the secret leader of Hydra inside S-Shield. Every decision he made fed the conspiracy, and his late hours weren't for the world's peace. Pierce sat at his large desk, scrolling through documents on his tablet. Across from him, a bald Caucasian man waited in a chair, watching Pierce finish. The man, Sitwell, was one of the 9-headed serpent agents who had shown up in the films, loyal and patient, awaiting his leader's orders. Chapter 297. It's like a gangster going undercover in the police station and becoming the chief nem. In the World Security Council building, inside the minister's office, Alexander Pierce sat behind a wide, polished desk, a tablet resting in his hands. The screen was full of reports, not about diplomacy or peace, but intelligence on Hydra's recent operations. Pierce's finger traced across images and dossiers, infiltration plans, assassination logs, and the movements of the 9-headed serpent agents around the globe. To anyone who knew him, Pierce's casual scrutiny of Hydra files in this room would have seemed brazen. The explanation was simple. After resigning as director of S-Healed, Pierce had recommended Nick Fury for the job and then taken a seat at the World Security Council. Through influence and maneuvering, he had climbed to the position of minister. That title, emblazoned on the door outside, gave him cover. The council was supposed to be above all national squabbles, precisely why it was valuable. With the minister's authority, Pierce could funnel the council's resources into Hydra's agenda and steer its decisions to suit Hydra's global ambitions. Pierce leaned back and smiled faintly at the thought. Hydra's reach inside the council made it safe enough to review enemy dossiers on his own desk. Across from him stood Agent Jonathan Sitwell, adjusting his gold-rimmed glasses and tapping a second tablet that mirrored the minister's screen. He was one of Hydra's 9-headed serpent operatives embedded in the council apparatus, an operative now reporting on the most urgent task at hand, recovering alien weapons. Our teams have begun sweeping up the alien tech that fell into the hands of criminal groups, Sitwell reported, eyes flicking over the manifest. Most of it, some pieces even from S-Overpowered inventories, has already been secured and brought back to our facilities. Pierce's interest sharpened. The alien invasion had been a rude surprise. Its resolution left lingering alarm. Those weapons were not just trophies, they were the technological leverage Hydra needed to cement domination. And the humans who had repelled the attack, the so-called superheroes, were a separate problem. If they survived, they would complicate Hydra's future plans. You were right to prioritize the retrieval, Pierce said. Those weapons changed the balance. Sitwell nodded. Progress is smooth, largely. The only outstanding items are in Manhattan. Our team there hasn't reported back definitively, and one Hydra unit outside New York has gone silent. Gone silent? Pierce's brow creased. The two troubling threads immediately connected in his mind. The Manhattan Squad's ambiguous status and the silent detachment beyond the city both smacked of outside interference. Unsettling memories returned to how the Council had voted to deploy a nuclear strike against New York during the invasion. Pierce had pressed for that motion. To him, it had been clear. Eliminate the alien threat, and with it, any heroes who might stand in Hydra's way. He did not grieve for New York. What mattered was that Earth, in Hydra's reckoning, was their prize. Eliminating rivals, even those celebrated as saviors, would clear the path. That missile, however, had vanished during launch. The pilot's debrief had produced nothing conclusive. The disappearance remained a loose end. But the weapons left behind were Pierce's priority now. The missing agents, a complicating variable. What do we know about those missing teams? He asked. Sitwell rotated the tablet, bringing up last transmissions and comm logs. The Manhattan unit was compromised, apparently manipulated. The outside unit, we've had no contact since their last ping. We're trying to trace signals, but he tapped the screen and the tablet spun a loading icon. Network's not responding. Pierce's jaw tightened. He suspected the hand behind at least one of these incidents. Noah. The man had interfered with Hydra's operations before, controlling agents with the Mind Stone and, in Manhattan's case, turning Hydra assets over to Nick Fury so that the official report would show the mission inconclusive. The outside unit, Pierce knew coldly, had been annihilated outright by Noah. When agents disappeared, Hydra could never afford to dither. Find who is acting against us, Pierce ordered. Trace everything. If we were blindsided, make them pay. Send assassins, a strike force, whatever it takes to retrieve those weapons and silence anyone blocking our recovery. Sitwell moved to comply, thumb poised to issue commands through the Council's network, only to be thwarted by the spinning loading icon. He tapped again, harder. The tablet remained stubbornly disconnected. A soft thump sounded at the office door, then a polite, measured knock. Knock, knock, knock. Chapter 298, Raid. Sitwell stared at his tablet, which had frozen on the screen. He tapped it impatiently, frowning. Then a knock sounded at the office door. In the silence of the night, it was unnaturally loud, echoing down the empty corridor. Knock, knock, knock. Sitwell and Pierce both turned toward the door. Who would be knocking this late? After midnight, no one ever disturbed Pierce except for Hydra operatives he'd summoned himself. He'd even instructed the on-duty staff at the World Security Council not to bother him, so the sudden knock put them both on edge. Sitwell, go see who it is, Pierce said, his voice serious. He snapped the tablet off and stashed it to keep the Hydra files from exposure. Sitwell swallowed. The building was one of Hydra's secret bases as much as it was the Council's, so he forced himself to calm down. He pulled his chair back and moved toward the door to check the peephole. Before he reached it, a cracking noise came from the lock. The doorknob had been forced. Sitwell froze. The sound was the unmistakable snap of a lock being twisted open. His hand went instinctively to the pistol at his hip. The door flew open, and a shadow darted into the office. Sitwell barely had time to react before the figure, a wiry woman in black, crashed into him. With a quick, precise kick, she struck his wrist. His grip faltered. The pistol tumbled from his hand and clattered across the floor. A dark muzzle lined him up at the temple. Agent Sitwell, good evening. The voice was low and edged with amusement. The intruder stepped into the light. Long burgundy hair, a lithe figure in a black combat suit. Level 7, Agent Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow. One Walther PPK was pressed to Sitwell's head. A second identical pistol covered Pierce. Lightweight and concealable, they were her favored weapons. Another figure filled the doorway and closed the damaged door behind him. Sitwell and Pierce stared. Stars and stripes colors, the familiar A on the helmet, the round shield at his back. Captain America, Steve Rogers, stood in the room. The lock hadn't failed by itself. Steve's superhuman strength had forced it. He could tear open a door as easily as others pulled a cord. "You've broken into the World Security Council, invaded my office, and pointed guns at me," Pierce said, recovering his composure with practiced facility. "Are you going to betray the United States?" Hidden beneath the table, Pierce's hand found the panic button he'd installed as a precaution. He pressed it subtly, hoping to call in the Hydra operatives he'd embedded in the building. "We're here to expose your crimes," Steve said, his voice hard with conviction. "People are being deceived by Hydra, and we're putting a stop to it." Sitwell went pale when the word Hydra left Rogers' mouth, sweat beading on his forehead. Pierce's face betrayed little. His composure was a mask. He answered with righteous indignation, but he kept his fingers working the button more urgently now. "What are you talking about, Steve Rogers? You broke into the World Security Council and you're spouting nonsense. Don't you know who I am? I'm the Minister of the World Security Council, the former director of S-Shield. If anyone here is a Nazi or Hydra, it's more likely you than me." Pierce's voice grew louder and more theatrical as he tried to assert authority. "Oh, what a speech," a teasing voice called from outside the window. Pierce froze. His office sat on the top floor, over 100 meters up. Who could be outside the glass? He turned to the curtain wall. A dark shape hung there, nearly invisible against the night. Tony Stark hovered in a blacked-out Iron Man suit, suspended outside the window. He'd been there when Natasha and Steve knocked, cloaked by the armor's dark paint. He waved a finger in mock applause before extending a launcher from his gauntlet. A blade of laser light cut the glass, and the panel dropped away. Shards sent Sitwell's chair skittering. Tony flew in through the new gap. The office, once just Pierce and Sitwell, was suddenly filled with Natasha, Steve, and Tony. The few remaining square meters felt impossibly crowded. The three intruders, guns and iron suit poised, made it clear this was a raid and not a negotiation. Chapter 299. Knock him out and take him away. On the top floor of the World Security Council building, outside the glass curtain wall, Iron Man hovered in a jet-black suit. He extended a laser emitter from his gauntlet and cut a neat square out of the glass. Using his boot thrusters, he steadied himself against the window, then guided the cut pane inward so it fell straight toward Pierce's desk. The pane crashed down onto Pierce's desk with a deafening crack. The council's tempered glass didn't shatter, but the edge that hit the desk spiderwebbed with tiny fractures. Pierce had just enough time to lean away. Had the glass struck him, he'd have been badly injured. For a moment, he forgot all about Black Widow's gun pointed at his head. "Mr. Pierce, don't move," Natasha warned. "One more step, and I'll put a bullet in your skull." With the muzzle inches from his face, Pierce raised his hands. At that moment, Tony entered the office through the opening, his foot thrusters dying down as he landed. The jet-black armor shifted its color, blending slowly with the office floor tiles. This was the Mark 16 nightclub, Tony's stealth suit, built for minimal detection. Few radars could pick up Nightclub's signature. The suit scanned its surroundings and adjusted its appearance like a chameleon. That lack of visibility was why Tony could approach Pierce's office undetected by the Council's security system. The trade-off was that Nightclub was a purely functional suit, only basic repulsors and laser emitters for offense. It wasn't a heavy combat frame. Tony hadn't actually built 16 full suits. The mark numbers were part of a blueprint with many variants, some combat-focused, some functional. After he finished the destroyer armor, Tony had rethought his priorities. The destroyer's raw power made some planned combat suits redundant, so he shifted focus to more specialized designs like Nightclub. "Tony Stark," Pierce barked, eyes darting between them. "You again. Are you lot planning to betray the United States today?" "Don't listen to him," Tony said. "He's probably broadcasting a distress signal to bring in reinforcements. Jarvis flagged several outgoing transmissions while I was outside the window. We intercepted them. No reinforcements are coming." Pierce's face went pale. He hadn't expected his distress call to be intercepted. His composure wavered, but he forced himself to stay calm. Understood, he lied. Natasha's mouth curved into a dangerous smile. You think you can pin this on me? Your actions will be exposed, and tomorrow you'll be charging us with treason. Tony scoffed. No, you're misunderstanding. We're not trying to trap you. We want your cooperation for an investigation. As for treason, we'll find out who's really betraying the country. Natasha lowered the pistol, twirled it with a practiced flick, and slipped it back into her holster. While Pierce watched, puzzled, she subtly raised her wrist. A stun dart blinked from a concealed launcher and embedded in Pierce's chest. A jolt of electricity raced through him, his knees buckled, and he slumped backward. Tony moved in and caught him by the armpits. Mission accomplished, he said. Rogers nodded and gave the orders. Stark, you take Pierce and leave by air. Agent Romanoff and I will get out by ground. Careful, don't fly too fast. He's a regular person, too much G-force and he'll come apart, Rogers warned. Got it, old-timer, Tony shot back, tightening his grip on the unconscious Pierce. His boot thrusters flared, and the suit lifted them smoothly toward the broken window. Did he just call me old-timer? Rogers muttered, raising an eyebrow as Tony disappeared into the night sky. After Tony walked out of the conference room carrying the unconscious Alexander Pierce, Rogers and Natasha turned their attention to the only other person left, Sitwell. The agent swallowed hard under their scrutiny. His knuckles were white from the way he clenched his hands. No, it's nothing to do with me, Sitwell stammered. I just came to report on the A-level task. He tried for an air of calm, hoping Captain America and Black Widow had come only for Pierce. Oh, really? Natasha asked, smiling. She pulled out her phone, snapped a photo of Sitwell, and ran it through an app. A few seconds later, she held the screen up for Rogers to see. This one too, she said, and let the last words hang in the air. Sitwell's legs suddenly lost strength. Before he could protest, Natasha activated the same device she'd used on Pierce. A quick, precise shock ran through him. His legs locked and he went limp. Rogers caught him before his head hit the sharp edge of the desk and eased the agent into a shoulder carry. Let's take him back too, Natasha said. Rogers nodded and hoisted the small, bald man as effortlessly as if he weighed nothing. Jarvis had already gone to work, blocking all the cameras and sensors in the World Security Council building, so they left the way they'd come, silent and unseen. Back at S-Shield headquarters, Noah watched a different sort of movement. A new notification pulsing on the private task panel, only he could see. It was past midnight and the daily tasks had refreshed. As usual, he checked for Hydra-related work. An A-level task had appeared. A-level task, eliminate Hydra. Hydra, an ancient secret organization operating in the shadows, sows chaos and destruction across the globe. Its influence has penetrated politics, economics, and technology, threatening world peace. Summoner, begin by eliminating the Hydra branch within S-Shield, then progressively eradicate Hydra's presence on Earth. S-Shield Hydra branch. Task progress 5%. Completion yields stage-based essence rewards. Hydra, task progress 1%. Noah blinked at the description. He hadn't expected a human organization to be designated an A-level task, and the entry was far more detailed than the usual assignments. It wasn't a single-kill bounty like the minor grifter jobs. This was a progressive, continuous objective. Wipe Hydra from the planet. The panel explained that the Hydra inside the Nazi regime had been only one branch of a much older organization. Hydra predated the Nazis and even the emergence of Red Skull, John Schmidt. Pierce was one leader among many. Baron Zemo, Baron Strucker, and the operative known as Viper were named as other branch heads. Clearing the S-Shield branch would be just the first step. Information recovered from Arnim Zola's memories would help locate other cells. Noah watched Nick Fury organize a retrieval team to bring Pierce in, Tony, Captain America, and Black Widow. An idea formed as he considered the task progress numbers. 5% for the S-Shield branch, 1% for Hydra overall. He'd only taken out a handful of operatives so far. The branch should number in the thousands. The percentage must not be a simple head count. Instead, the index likely rose with meaningful events, intelligence exposure, the capture or neutralization of key leaders, or the public exposure of Hydra networks. That led to a further question. If he accepted the task, but someone else carried out the work, would the system credit him? Noah decided to test it. He calculated that capturing Pierce would be a significant event and would probably push the progress needle. He didn't need to risk himself to find out. If the system credited him when Tony and the others brought Pierce in, he could use proxies, his subordinates like Blitz and the nano-robot swarms, to handle routine eliminations and let the system register the gains. If the system required his personal involvement, he could still secure the objective later. Nothing he planned would make him lose the task. He watched the operation unfold. When Pierce was brought back and secured, the task panel registered a rapid jump, 10 points added almost instantly. Noah allowed himself a small smile. The result confirmed what he'd suspected. The system credited the task to him even when others performed the action. That meant the daily grind could be delegated, as long as the right triggers happened, capturing leaders, exposing Hydra cells, eliminating important operatives. Progress and essence would flow back to him without needing to handle every dirty job in person.